The aliens filled the sky like a living storm, their ships sleek curved, glittering with impossible alloys, hung above the shattered colonies as if mocking the ruins below. The once proud human cities had been reduced to dust in days. Roads had split, towers had collapsed, and survivors clawed through rubble, searching for water that no longer flowed. From the alien perspective, this was already finished. Humanity was nothing more than a backwater species with fragile bones, limited technology, and a history of endless wars against itself. We were ants that had dared to bite a boot, and now that boot pressed down harder. I stood on the ruined observation deck of our defense station, staring at the enemy fleet as it arranged itself in perfect formation above Earth's orbit. Their lines were sharp, precise, almost artistic. It was the way predators circle to kill. My hands gripped the railing until the skin along my knuckles split. The calm officer muttered behind me, voice shaking, "They've blocked every escape route. Nothing's getting through." Nothing except the one thing they had underestimated. The aliens didn't know what was coming because they believed their war was already won. They thought our fleets had been destroyed in the first strikes. They thought our shipyards were ash. They thought Earth was a broken husk. And maybe we were, but someone had forgotten to tell the men who still carried fire in their blood. I remember the last transmission we'd received from the outer belt. It was nothing more than a string of coordinates and a single line of text marked urgent, hold fleet inbound. I had doubted it myself. Too many promises had been made in the weeks since the invasion began. Too many reinforcements had turned out to be nothing more than rumors and lies. But as I stared at the black edge of space beyond the alien armada, I felt something stir. The aliens opened a broadcast, then their message translated into every human tongue and pumped across what was left of our communication networks. Their commander appeared tall, reptilian, a sneer carved into his scaled face. His armor gleamed, his eyes burned with certainty. Humans, his voice dripped disdain. Your resistance is futile. Your armies are broken. Your fleets, he paused, smiling thinly, were never fleets at all. Your species will kneel or vanish. Around me, the survivors who huddled in the station lowered their heads. Some wept quietly, others just stared blankly, hollowed out by too much loss. The enemy's arrogance was not wrong. By every measure, humanity should have been finished, but arrogance has always been the blind spot of conquerors. The commander's image flickered, and before he could close the transmission, a tremor ran through the sensors, a pulse, a disturbance at the edge of the system. The comm officer's eyes widened. "Sir, I'm detecting mass signatures." "Multiple, no, dozens." The alien fleet began a shift, breaking its perfect formation. For the first time, I saw hesitation ripple across their ranks. I leaned closer to the glass, heart pounding in my chest. Out there in the black, faint lights appeared. At first they looked like stars, then they moved, growing larger, brighter, harder. They weren't stars at all. They were engines burning with human fury. The first warship emerged from the void. It wasn't beautiful like the alien crafts. It was brutal, angled plates of armor, turrets bristling, its hull scarred from old battles. It looked less like a ship and more like a weapon, carved into the shape of vengeance. And it wasn't alone. One by one, more warships appeared, sliding into formation, not with elegance but with the raw discipline of men who knew this was their last chance. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, the kind of fleet no alien intelligence had believed humanity capable of building, much less hiding. The comm officer whispered, almost afraid to breathe. They came. I felt something break loose inside me, something that had been buried under weeks of fear and defeat. I straightened, blood roaring in my ears, as the alien commander's broadcast cut off abruptly. The arrogance on his face had been replaced by something colder, something he hadn't expected to feel. Today, fear. Humanity's warships had entered the field. The alien fleet shifted uneasily, their once perfect symmetry cracking as ripples of uncertainty spread through the formation. They had swept across our colonies with terrifying efficiency, never stumbling, never faltering. Their discipline had been a blade pressed to our throat. But now, for the first time, I saw hesitation. Dozens of human warships burned their way into the system. Engines flared like miniature suns, blue-white flames cutting the black of space. Their armor was scarred, their silhouettes jagged compared to the sleek alien vessels, but they radiated something no alien ship carried: purpose, defiance, rage. The alien commander's transmission had cut abruptly, but I could still imagine him standing tall, scales tight across his face, pupils narrowing as he watched his flawless fleet confronted by something he'd sworn was already ash. His arrogance would not let him admit fear aloud, but I knew the truth. He was staring at ghosts that refused to die. Inside the station, my chest felt like it might burst. I pressed my palms against the glass, watching the warships expand from specks into monsters of steel. The survivors gathered behind me had risen to their feet, silent at first, then whispering. Some clutched each other, their despair cracking under a fragile surge of hope. Are they ours? A boy asked, voice trembling. Yes, I whispered. My throat was tight, my eyes burning. They're ours. The alien fleet reacted quickly, though not without confusion. Their wings fanned out like predators, circling, massive flagships moving to the fore. Their armor gleamed, weapons charging with pulsing light that glowed across the void. They had numbers on their side, and for all their surprise, their confidence was not yet gone. Contact imminent, the comm officer said, staring at his flickering console. His hands trembled over the keys, his voice breaking. They're locking weapons. God, it's about to begin. And then it did. The first shot wasn't fired by the aliens. It was a human cruiser, old and battered, its forward cannon sparking to life. The ship roared like an animal chained too long, unleashing a salvo of rail slugs that tore across the black. The rounds cut through an alien frigate's shields before anyone could react, ripping its hull open in a blossom of white fire. The explosion lit the battlefield like lightning across a midnight sky. The aliens responded instantly. Their disciplined ranks unleashed a storm of plasma bolts, brilliant arcs of emerald and violet lashing outward. The void lit up with destruction. A storm without sound. Shields flared, hulls cracked, and for a moment the sky above Earth became a canvas of fire and fury. I gripped the railing, breath caught in my throat. There was no sound here, no roar of cannons or scream of engines, only the silent ballet of violence as two civilizations collided. Yet somehow I felt every impact, every detonation vibrating in my bones. The alien commander regained control of his fleet quickly, barking orders that snapped his ships back into formation. He would not allow panic to take root. His kind had always believed order was invincible, but human war was never about order. It was about chaos. It was about grit. It was about refusing to die. Our warships charged headlong into the aliens. Their formations, ragged, unpredictable, a destroyer broke away from its squadron, diving between two enemy cruisers. Plasma fire ran across its hull, burning deep gouges into the metal, but it stayed the course, forcing its way close enough to unload a point-blank volley. The alien cruisers never expected it. Both went up in twin eruptions, their wreckage scattering like glass across the void. The destroyer followed seconds later, torn apart by returned fire, but the damage had been done. The survivors around me gasped. Some cried out in grief, others in awe. We were watching men throw themselves into fire, not because they expected to survive, but because they refused to bow. The calm officer's eyes were wide as he whispered, "They're not fighting to win. They're fighting to bleed them and bleed the aliens." They did. Another group of human ships surged forward, missiles streaking from their bays. The projectiles split apart mid-flight, releasing swarms of smaller warheads that wove through alien defenses like a school of hungry predators. Dozens found their marks, detonating against hulls and ripping chunks from once perfect vessels. The alien fleet countered with surgical precision, their beams slicing across the void. A human carrier took a direct hit, its hangar igniting in a burst of fire that tore the ship in half. Fighters spewed from the wreck like sparks from a dying flame, scattering every direction. The alien commander's voice broke through again, his arrogance now laced with venom. "Insolent creatures, you delay the inevitable. You cannot defeat us. You cannot endure." I stared at his scaled face, his narrowing eyes, and for the first time since this war began, I smiled, not because he was wrong, but because he was rattled enough to need to remind himself. The human fleet pressed harder, refusing to give ground. They weren't coordinated like the aliens, they weren't precise, but they were relentless. Each captain fought as if the galaxy itself rested on his shoulders. Each ship carried men who had lost too much to care about survival. The aliens began to lose their edge, their lines fractured under the pressure of chaos. Ships veered off to intercept unpredictable human maneuvers, breaking their perfect symmetry. And in war, once perfection breaks, cracks spread fast. I watched a human battleship, the Resolute, plow straight into a cluster of alien vessels. Its shields burned away in seconds under concentrated fire, its armor melting under the onslaught. But instead of retreating, it accelerated. Its captain had made his choice. The ship rammed into the largest alien cruiser, its engines still burning full. The collision shattered both ships in a cataclysmic blast that rocked the entire field. The aliens had never expected such savagery. The survivors around me shouted in unison, some in horror, others in raw admiration. That single act of suicidal defiance ignited something in all of us. It was proof that humanity would not go quietly. Still, the cost was brutal. For every alien ship that burned, 2 human ships fell. Their sacrifice was painted across the stars, holes breaking apart, flames scattering into the void. And yet the aliens were bleeding. For the first time in their campaign, they were taking losses that mattered. The alien commander's face reappeared. Fury twisting his features, his scales flared red, his teeth bared. Enough. He roared, his voice rattling through the comms. You are insects, I will crush you myself. Behind him, his flagship shifted forward, massive cannons charging with deadly energy. The vessel dwarfed everything around it. Mountain of alien engineering that had spearheaded the invasion. It had reduced colonies to ash with a single volley. Now it turned its weapons toward the oncoming human fleet. The sight made my blood run cold. One strike from that monster and our fragile hope would shatter, but even as I thought it, one human ship broke formation, smaller than the rest, almost invisible against the backdrop of chaos. It darted forward, weaving through wreckage and plasma, fire angling straight for the alien flagship. I squinted through the viewport, heart pounding. What are you doing? I whispered. The comm officer recognized at first, his voice cracked. It's a stealth corvette. They're going for the flagship. The little ship slipped past enemy fire, barely more than a shadow against the burning field. The aliens noticed too late. Their flagship fired its main cannons, vaporizing 2 human destroyers in blinding flashes of light, but the corvette was already there. It latched onto the flagship's underbelly, engines flaring as it burrowed close. Transmission cut through the static. Human voice, ragged but fierce, broadcast across every channel. For Earth, for every city you burned. We're not done. Then the corvette detonated. The explosion wasn't just a blast, it was a chain reaction. The flagship's shields flared, held, then cracked under the concentrated force. Fire tore through its armor, ripping open compartments, devouring its belly from within. The great vessel shuddered, its lights flickering, its engines sputtering. Gasps filled the station around me. The alien commander's transmission dissolved into static as his ship buckled under the shockwave. And for the first time since this invasion began, the aliens realized something they had never believed possible. Their fleet could be broken. The human survivors erupted into cries and sobs, clutching each other, hope roaring louder than fear. I pressed my forehead against the glass, my fists trembling, my chest tight with pride and grief. The battlefield burned, wreckage spinning endlessly into the black, but the truth was undeniable. Humanity's warships had entered the field, and the galaxy would never be the same. The battle had ended, but the silence that followed was worse than the fire. Through the station's cracked viewport, I saw the wreckage drifting. Human ships and alien ships alike spun in endless orbits, their broken hulls glowing faintly against the black. Some still burned, faint trails of plasma leaking from ruptured cores. Others were nothing but twisted metal, floating tombs for men who would never see Earth again. For every alien cruiser split apart, for every frigate that burned out under our guns, a dozen of our own had gone with it. The void was filled with ghosts. Inside the station there was no cheering now. The initial cry of hope had collapsed into silence as reality pressed in. Survivors crowded against the glass, watching the debris field. Some whispered prayers, others just stared hollow-eyed, knowing friends or fathers or sons had been on those ships. I stood with them, my hand pressed against the cold glass. My throat felt tight, as if all the smoke of the battlefield had filled my lungs. Even from here we had bled the aliens. Yes, We had proven we weren't finished, but victory wasn't what I saw out there. What I saw was sacrifice, the calm. Officer sat slumped in his chair, staring at a screen. His face was pale, his lips trembling as he whispered. Names, crew lists, ship rosters, every time another signal winked out, his shoulders hunched lower. They bought us time, I said softly. The words tasted bitter. He lifted his eyes toward me, red and wet. Time for what? To watch more die? I didn't answer. I had no answer. A voice crackled over the comms, breaking the suffocating silence. It was deep, hoarse but steady, a captain's voice, broadcast on every channel. This is Captain Harland of the Iron Rain. We remain operational. To all human vessels still alive, form on us. We bleed, but we do not break, not today. His words carried a weight, a gravity, that pulled survivors back from despair. One by one, battered human ships answered, their signals weak but still burning, frigates with half their hulls gone, destroyers missing whole sections of plating, even a carrier with a gaping hole where its hangar had been. All of them limped toward Harland's position. It was not a fleet anymore. It was a scarred, limping pack of survivors, but it was enough. The people in the station stirred, whispers running through them like sparks. Some began to straighten, wiping their eyes. The sight of those ships dragging themselves back into formation reminded us that hope wasn't dead. Not yet. I tore my gaze away from the viewport and turned inward. The station was barely holding together. Hull plates groaned, lights flickered, and the air carried a faint metallic tang that hinted at failing systems. But the people here, the men, women, and children who had clung to life through the invasion, they looked at me now not because I was anyone important, but because I was standing, because I hadn't bowed. That realization cut into me, sharper than any blade. If I broke, they would break. If I stood, maybe, just maybe, they'd hold too. I clenched my fists and forced my voice to stay steady. They thought we were finished, I said. They thought Earth would kneel, but look. Out there, we bled them and will keep bleeding them until they regret the day they set foot in our skies. Murmurs rippled through the survivors. Not loud, not triumphant, but enough. Enough to keep them upright. But even as I spoke, my chest burned with grief. I remember the Resolute, its captain, ramming an alien cruiser in that final blaze of defiance. I remembered the corvette's last words before it detonated against the flagship. For Earth, we're not done. Those voices stayed with me. They would never leave me. Far above, on the broken remains of his flagship, the alien commander seethed. The chamber around him hissed with smoke, sparks leaping from ruined conduits. His scaled hands clutched the rail, claws digging into the metal until it bent. His officers knelt low, their eyes downcast, terrified of the storm radiating from him. The loss burned deeper than damage to ships. It was an insult, a stain against the supremacy of his kind. These humans, primitive, chaotic, undisciplined, had dared to wound him, explain, he hissed, voice low and venomous, his tongue flicked against sharp teeth as his eyes narrowed. An officer trembled, rising just enough to speak. They fight without reason, Supreme Commander. They throw themselves into fire. They. Alien's claw lashed out, striking the officer across the face. The scaled soldier crumpled, blood spilling across the deck. They fight with desperation. The commander snarled, "It is not Strength, it is weakness made dangerous. And I will break it. He turned toward the tactical display where human ships limped back into their ragged formation. Weak, broken, but still standing. The sight filled him with rage. Prepare. The second wave, he ordered, his voice thundered across the chamber. Call the reserve fleets from the outer systems. I want their skies burning until not even ash remains. No mercy, no prisoners. The officers bowed, scurrying to obey. The alien commander's claws tightened. Again, sparks still falling around him. His eyes glowed with fury. He would drown this world in fire, but deep in his chest, hidden even from himself, flicker of something else stirred. Fear. Back on the station, the hours stretched heavy. We worked to stabilize life support, patching leaks with anything we had left. Survivors carried debris, rigged systems comforted children who couldn't stop crying. I walked the corridors trying to offer words I didn't believe, trying to keep them moving. Every step was heavy. My body ached, my mind burned, but stopping wasn't an option. At one point I stopped outside the infirmary. The doors were wide open, revealing rows of men and women laid out on stretchers, burns, missing limbs, faces gray with pain. Medics moved among them, their hands shaking from exhaustion. A boy no older than 17 caught my eye. He had a makeshift bandage wrapped around his torso, blood seeping through. His lips were cracked, his skin pale. But when he saw me, he grinned weakly. We hit them hard, didn't we? He whispered. I knelt beside him, my chest tight. Yeah, I said softly, we hit them hard. He closed his eyes, still smiling, and drifted into unconsciousness. I stayed there a moment, my fists trembling, before forcing myself back to my feet. We had won nothing yet. The aliens would return stronger, angrier. And when they did, I had no idea if our broken fleet could withstand them, but I knew one thing: we would meet them again. And we would not bow. Later, as I stood once more before the viewport, I saw Captain Harlan's fleet stabilizing, regrouping. Fires still burned on many hulls. Escape pods drifted among the wreckage, but the formation was there. The line still stood. A transmission came through. Harlan's voice, rough but steady. To all human survivors, we are not finished. They'll come again, and we'll be ready. Gather what strength you can. Every station, every outpost, every man with blood still in his veins, we fight together now. His words struck deep. He wasn't just speaking as a captain, he was speaking as the voice of humanity. I pressed my forehead against the glass. Again, my reflection staring back at me. Hollow eyes, bloodshot, a man carrying too much grief. But behind me I saw the survivors gathering once more, listening, their backs straighter than before. We weren't finished, the galaxy thought. Humanity was prey, but we had teeth, and next time when the aliens came, they would learn what it truly meant to face men who had lost everything. The repair bays stank of ozone and blood. Men and women moved like ghosts among the wreckage of our station, welding, patching, dragging scorched panels into place with shaking arms. Sparks rained from severed conduits, mixing with the acrid smoke that never seemed to leave the air. Somewhere deep below, coolant leaked steadily, dripping in a rhythm like a clock counting down time. That was all we had bought ourselves. I walked through the chaos, boots crunching against shards of glass and metal. Survivors nodded at me as I passed, not in respect but in desperation, as though needing to see me Upright reminded them to stay upright. 2. Their faces were gaunt smeared with grease and ash, eyes sunken from sleepless nights, but no one stopped working, not one, out in the void hour. Fleet limped in orbit, the ships were ugly things now, stitched together by emergency repairs, glowing faintly. Plating had been welded back into place. Some looked like hollowed carcasses, kept alive only by sheer willpower, yet they still floated in formation, still carried men willing to die aboard them. Captain Harlan's flagship, the Iron Rain, held the center. Its armor was shredded, one entire side blackened from plasma burns, but its cannons were still hot and ready. Harlan had become the anchor for us all. The comm crackled, his voice filling the bay. Report all status updates to Central Command. I don't care how broken your ship looks, if it can move, if it can shoot, it stays in the fight. We'll make them regret stepping into our skies. His words carried across every corridor, every deck, every outpost. Still alive, he didn't sound tired, though I knew he must have been. He sounded like iron. I envied him for that. Because I was tired, bone-deep tired, I found myself drifting toward the observation deck again, drawn by habit, by the need to see what we were fighting. For the viewport showed Earth below, a scarred jewel, blue and green, marred by the black smudges of burning cities, and beyond the fleet hung in the void like wounded wolves circling their den. The sight made my chest ache. My thoughts wandered unbidden to the night I lost my brother. He'd been stationed on Titan, one of the first colonies hit by the aliens. I'd listened to his last transmission over and over. The static-filled words burned into my skull. Don't wait for me, fight. When Titan burned, so did everything I thought was unshakable. I carried his voice with me now through every hour of fear, through every moment when giving up felt easier. It was his ghost that kept me upright. And now, looking at those wrecked ships, still fighting to breathe, I realized he wasn't the only ghost we carried. Every man and woman here had lost someone. Father, a mother, a child. We weren't fighting because victory was certain. We were fighting because there was nothing left to lose. The comm officer found me. Then, his uniform stained with soot, his hands still trembling from overwork. Sir, he said, voice, Harlan's is calling. A council, surviving captains, station leads, anyone who can still make decisions. I nodded, tearing my gaze from the stars. Then let's go. The council chamber was nothing more than a half-collapsed operations room, its ceiling blackened, its walls patched with salvaged plating. A flickering hollow display hovered in the center, casting ghostly light across the gathered faces. Captain Harlan appeared on the feed, his scarred face grim but steady. Around him, other captains patched in, men with bloodied bandages around their heads, women with hollow eyes but firm voices. These were not leaders who sat safe in gilded towers. They were warriors dragged through hell, still gripping their weapons. Harlan wasted no time. The aliens will come again, he said flatly. They won't make the same mistake twice. We hit their pride, and now they'll bring everything they have to crush us. If we wait, they'll sweep us aside like ash. We need a plan. A younger captain spat bitterly. What plan? Half my guns are offline, my engines barely work, and we've lost more men than I can count. We can't fight another wave. Then we make them bleed again. Harlan growled, his eyes burned, his jaw tight. Every ship we take from them is a victory. Every second we survive is another chance for Earth to breathe. The room filled with arguments, some calling for retreat, others for a desperate strike. The voices rose, crashing against each other like waves. I stayed silent, listening, my fists clenched. Part of me wanted to scream with them, to demand answers no one had. But another part knew this chaos was exactly what had always made us dangerous. We weren't perfect, we weren't unified, but when pushed against the wall, we became something feral, something the aliens couldn't predict. Finally, Harlan's voice cut through the noise. Listen to me, we're not just fighting for this station, we're not just fighting for our fleets, we're fighting for every survivor left on Earth. If we fall here, if we give them this system, humanity ends. Do you want your families to die screaming in cages? Silence. No, we answered as one. Then fight. The council ended. No grand strategy, no flawless plan, only a grim pact between broken men to hold the line, no matter the cost. Far beyond the system, the alien commander marshaled his reserves in orbit around a crimson gas giant. His fleets gathered, row upon row of gleaming warships, each one bristling with weapons that had reduced entire colonies to slag. The commander stood at the helm of his new flagship, his scaled face lit by the glow of 1,000 tactical displays. He had replaced rage with cold precision. These humans are not warriors, he told his officers. They are vermin who bite only when cornered. Their resistance is not strength, it is desperation, and desperation burns quickly. His claws tapped against the railing. We will strike not at their ships, but at their will, their stations, their survivors, their cities. We will burn every hiding place, tear apart every shelter until they learn fear greater than their rage. His fleet rumbled too, life engines igniting. The second wave was coming back on the station. Preparations dragged on, hull breaches sealed, weapons charged, wounded tended. Every survivor was put to work, from seasoned engineers to children carrying supplies. No one was idle. I found myself outside again, standing by the viewport as the fleet took shape, ugly, scarred and battered, but still there. Wolves refusing to die. The calm officer joined me, his face gaunt, his hands trembling less than before. Do you think we'll make it? He asked quietly. I didn't answer at first. My eyes stayed on the stars, on the broken line of warships against the void. Finally I said, no, not all of us. Maybe not even most of us, but we'll make them remember us. We'll make them regret ever stepping into our sky. He nodded slowly, his jaw tight, and for the first time I saw steel in his eyes. Out there the aliens were coming. They had numbers, power, arrogance. But we had ghosts, and ghosts are harder to kill than flesh. The stars shifted. At first it looked like the black itself was moving, swallowing the void in rippling waves. Then the sensors screamed, filling the station with alarms that cut straight into the bone. Mass signatures, hundreds. The second wave had arrived. I gripped the railing in the observation deck as the first alien ship slid into view. Sleek, silvered monsters there, holes etched with glowing lines that pulsed like veins. They came in disciplined formations, endless rows stretching farther than I could count. Their engines lit the darkness like a second sunrise. Behind me the survivors froze. Conversations died. Children clung to Their mothers, men clenched their jaws, faces draining of color. We had all known this would happen, but knowing didn't make it easier to see. The comm officer's voice shook. Sir, this isn't just a fleet, it's a purge. Force, he was right, the aliens hadn't come this time to fight us ship to ship. They had come to erase us, Captain. Harlan's voice filled the comms, calm and steady, even as the void drowned in enemy firepower. All hands to battle stations, shields up, guns hot. This is it, people. If you're breathing, you're fighting. They want our skies, they'll choke on our ashes first. His words carried fire across the battered fleet. Lights flared as ships powered their weapons, shields rising in ragged waves of blue and white. They weren't perfect, most of them barely patched together, but every last one of them stood in line. The alien commander's flagship moved to the fore, larger than anything we had faced yet. Its hull gleamed like polished bone, its prow shaped into a jagged spear. From its bridge, the commander looked down at us with contempt carved across his scaled face. He opened a system-wide broadcast, his voice dripping with venom. Humans, you mistake desperation for strength. You think chaos makes you dangerous, but I will show you what order truly is. Your species ends today. His fleet began to descend. The first shots came like meteors, alien plasma bolts streak across the void, green fire that tore through the darkness in blinding arcs. One struck a human destroyer square in the chest. Its shields flared, sputtered, then collapsed. The next volley ripped the ship in half, scattering wreckage across the field. The survivors on our station gasped, some crying out, the children covered their ears as though trying to block out the sight, but there was no hiding from this. Then the humans answered. Rail guns thundered, missiles streaked, torpedoes flared. Our ships unleashed everything they had, pouring fire into the advancing armada. A dozen alien frigates exploded in brilliant blossoms of light, their wreckage spinning into their own formation. But for every alien ship that fell, 5 more pressed forward. Void became a furnace, fire against fire, steel against plasma. Human warships twisted and turned, breaking formation, diving into chaos. The aliens tried to hold their lines, but the sheer ferocity of the attack fractured them. I pressed closer to the glass, my breath fogging against it. The sight was overwhelming, ships exploding like stars, debris fields colliding, fighters swarming between capital ships like gnats. It was madness, and yet it was beautiful in its horror. On the comms, voices overlapped. Captains shouting, gunners swearing, dying men screaming into the void before static swallowed them. Target locked, firing, shields failing. We need reinforcements. We're hit. We're burning. We static. Every lost signal was another ghost added to our ranks. Still the line held. Captain Harlan's iron rain led the charge, its cannons pounding into the enemy like a hammer. Beside it, frigates darted like wolves, snapping at alien cruisers and retreating before they could be swatted aside. The alien commander sneered from his throne, his claws tapped the armrest. Cold and certain, break them, he hissed. Target their carriers, burn their station, leave no survivors. His orders rippled through the alien fleet, and suddenly half their formation turned, not toward our ships but toward the planet below, toward Earth. My blood turned to ice. They're going after the surface, the comm officer whispered, horrified. The cities, the survivors No, I said through clenched teeth. My fists trembled against the glass. They're trying to break us. They want us to watch everything burn. Captain Harland must have realized the same thing because his voice roared. Across the comms, all units break. Formation, protect the surface. Don't let them through. The fleet shifted, battered ships, throwing themselves between Earth and the advancing alien wave. A destroyer dove straight into the path of enemy fire, taking volley after volley into its hull until it exploded in a blaze that shielded the planet for just a few seconds more. Every second bought was paid in blood. I could feel the survivors around me, straining, watching, whispering prayers to gods they no longer believed in. Children pressed their faces into their mothers' arms, men clenched their jaws so hard blood trickled from their gums, and my chest burned with rage so hot it was hard to breathe. They thought we would watch our world burn. They thought fear would make us bow, but all it did was sharpen the knife inside us. On his flagship, the alien commander leaned forward, his tongue flicking across his teeth as explosions lit the void. They cling to life like vermin, he hissed. Every moment they buy costs them tenfold, and still they cling. It disgusts me. One of his officers spoke carefully, trembling under his gaze. Supreme Commander, perhaps, their resistance signals more than desperation. They, the commander's claws lashed out, striking the officer down where he stood. No, he snarled, it is not strength, it is weakness given form. They burn themselves to cinders, and in the end the cinders scatter. This is inevitable. Yet in the pit of his chest, he felt something new. He didn't want to name it, didn't want to admit it, but it was there, a flicker of unease. The human fleet refused to break. I watched as a Corvette, engines ablaze, slammed headfirst into an alien carrier, detonating its warheads at point-blank range. The explosion tore the carrier in half, spilling burning fragments into its escorts. I saw the iron rain take hit after hit, its shields collapsing, its hull splitting open, but Harland's voice never wavered. Keep firing, don't stop. If you have one bullet left, aim it straight at their heart. The calm officer beside me was weeping now, his hands shaking as he clutched the console. They can't win. God, they can't win. No, I said, my voice low, steady despite the storm in my chest. But they can make sure the aliens never forget. Because that was the truth. We weren't fighting for survival anymore. We were fighting from memory for the galaxy too. Remember that when humanity was cornered, we made our enemies bleed. The battlefield burned brighter, more savage. With every passing second, human ships were falling fast, their numbers dwindling, their signals blinking out, one after another. But the aliens weren't unscathed. Their perfect formations were shattered, their pristine hulls scarred and burning. The second wave was breaking us, but in breaking us they were bleeding too. And somewhere in the commander's chest, that flicker of unease grew into something he couldn't deny. Fear. The station shook again, the groan of stressed hull plating echoing like thunder through the corridors. Debris rained down from the ceiling, and for a heartbeat I thought it might all collapse on top of us. We couldn't keep watching from here. If this was our last stand, I needed to be out there where the real fight lived, where men bled and died for the sky. Captain Harland's call came through as though fate itself had heard me. We need every able body. Shuttle runs leaving the station. bored. The ships now, if you can hold a rifle or carry ammo, get in the fight. The survivors stirred, hesitant at first, then moving with grim purpose. I didn't think twice. I grabbed my pack and ran for the hangar. The shuttle stank of sweat and scorched metal. Men packed shoulder to shoulder, silent, their faces pale but their eyes sharp. Some clutched rifles, others just tools and gear for repairs. None of us pretended we'd be coming back. The engines roared and the shuttle tore from the station, rattling as it plunged into the chaos outside. Through the tiny viewport, the void erupted in fire and fury. Alien ships swept like predators, their weapons carving through black space. Human ships dove into the maelstrom, smaller, slower, but relentless. The shuttle weaved through wreckage, jolting as shock waves rattled its hull. A burning frigate drifted past, split in half, its crew tumbling silently into space. One man floated by the window, frozen, his face locked in an eternal scream. The man beside me crossed himself, his lips moving in a prayer. I clenched my fists and kept staring. We slammed into the docking bay of a destroyer Vanguard. The ramp dropped and we spilled out into chaos. The bay was smoke-filled, claxons blaring, engineers racing to patch holes in the hull. Corpse lay sprawled near the wall, blood smeared across the deck. An officer waved us forward. Get moving, gunners to stations, engineers to deck 3, move. I followed the stream of bodies into the ship's belly, the air hot and choking. Every corridor we passed bore scars, plasma burns, twisted metal, fire suppression foam clinging to walls. It was like stepping into the ribs of a dying beast still clawing at its killer. I ended up at a gun deck, shoved behind a console with a headset thrust into my hands. You know how to run targeting systems, the gun chief barked. Enough, I lied. Then sit your ass down and make yourself useful. Moments later, the Vanguard dove into battle. The deck shuddered with every hit we took, every shot we fired. Through the viewport, I saw the alien fleet pressing forward, their ships gleaming, their plasma fire carving through the void. Like lightning, target incoming. Frigate, the chief shouted. I locked the system onto a silver shape cutting through the black. My hands shook as I adjusted the coordinates. The alien frigate's shields glowing bright, fire. The cannons roared, the recoil slammed through the deck, vibrating in my bones. Rail slugs streak across the void, tearing into the alien frigate's flank. Its shields flickered, then collapsed under the barrage. The next volley ripped its hull open, flames gushing into space as it split apart. Men cheered, the sound ragged, desperate. I exhaled, hard sweat running down my face. There was no time to breathe. Another alien ship swept in, firing plasma bolts that slammed into the Vanguard. The deck lurched violently, alarm screaming, panels exploded, sparks raining down. Shields down, someone shouted. The chief barked, keep firing, don't you stop. Damn it, I reset the targeting system, my fingers moving on instinct, locking onto the alien ship. The gunners roared again, and slugs ripped across the void. This time the alien ship dodged, plasma blasts lancing back in reply. The Vanguard shook under the impact. Men were thrown from their stations. One of them screamed as fire licked up his arm. Flesh charring, someone dragged him away, shouting for a medic. I kept firing, my hands no longer shook. They moved with rage. Every shot was for Titan, for my brother, for every city that had burned. On his flagship, the alien commander snarled as reports poured in. 17 ships destroyed, 34 damaged, human losses still rising, but unacceptable, the commander's voice thundered, making the chamber tremble. His claws dug into the railing, sparks scattering where steel bent. They are not warriors, he spat, they are animals. Gnawing at our claws, I will not suffer this insult again. His eyes burned as he watched the humans fight. Their ships moved without order, without symmetry, diving recklessly, sacrificing themselves with no hesitation. It defied every principle of war he had been taught, and worse, it was working. Break their lines, he hissed. I want their station burning. I want their planet shattered, and if I must, I will tear the flesh from their bones myself. His officers bowed, though fear rippled in their eyes. The vanguard buckled again as another volley slammed into us. The hull screamed, lights flickered, and I was thrown hard against the console. Blood filled my mouth. Engineering reports. Breach on deck 3, someone yelled. The chief's face was black with soot, but his eyes burned. We're still breathing, we're still fighting, so fire, I obeyed. Another alien ship fell under our guns, its hull erupting into a blossom of white fire. The men around me roared, voices but defiant for a heartbeat. I felt it too, pride, the kind that made you forget fear. Then the vanguard took a direct hit. The blast ripped through the hull like a blade, throwing us all to the floor. Fire engulfed the gun deck, smoke choking the air. Men screamed as flames devoured consoles as steel collapsed in showers of sparks. I dragged myself to my knees, coughing, my vision blurred. The chief lay crushed under a fallen beam, blood pooling across the deck, his eyes locked on mine, wide, desperate. Keep firing, he gasped before the life drained from him. Something inside me snapped. I clawed my way back to the console, coughing blood, ignoring the flames burning inches from my hands. My fingers slammed against the controls, locking the system onto the nearest alien cruiser. Come on, I growled, voice raw. Come on, the cannons roared again, spitting their fury into the void. Slugs tore into the alien cruiser, ripping its shields apart. It exploded in a thunderous bloom of fire, debris scattering across the battlefield. The deck buckled beneath me, the ship screaming its death cry, but I didn't stop, not until the console went dark, the power failing as the vanguard finally gave way. I woke in smoke and silence. My head rang, my chest burned, and for a moment I thought I'd crossed over to wherever the dead go. But then I heard groans, the hiss of leaking air, the faint tremor of battle still raging outside. We were still alive. Barely. I dragged myself through the wreckage, pulling others free where I could, forcing myself forward. Every breath tasted like ash, every heartbeat screamed with pain, but I kept moving. Because we were not finished, not yet. The world swam in smoke and blood. When I opened my eyes, the wreckage of the vanguard stretched around me like a shattered rib cage. Sparks hissed from ruptured conduits, twisted steel groaned with every shudder. The air was thin, my chest burning as I sucked it in. Somewhere nearby, a man moaned softly, his voice fading into silence. We were broken, but we weren't finished. I dragged myself upright, my body screaming with every movement. My arm was slick with blood, a deep gash running down its length. Pain flared with each heartbeat, but I forced myself to stay standing. Through the cracked viewport ahead, the Battlefield raged on. Human ships were dying, one after another, their signals blinked out, their hulls scattering into the void, but still they fought. Every ship that fell took another alien with it. Every blast carved one more scar into the enemy's pride. The comms crackled weakly, static breaking apart. Captain Harlan's voice, "Hold the line. Don't stop." It was barely audible, but it was enough. His words clung to us like lifelines in a storm. I staggered through the ruins of the gun deck, finding survivors where I could. A handful of men, faces blackened with soot, eyes wide with shock. Together we pulled each other from the wreckage, patching wounds with torn uniforms, dragging bodies into makeshift shelters. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were ghosts refusing to fade. Then the deck lurched, throwing us all to the floor. Through the viewport, I saw why. The alien flagship had moved closer. It dwarfed everything around it. A jagged spear of silver and fire. Plasma cannons glowed along its hull, each one primed to tear through whatever resistance remained. And at its prow, visible even across the gulf of space, stood the alien commander, his image projected across every human channel, his scaled face sneering down at us. Pathetic, his voice hissed, dripping with venom. "You waste your lives clinging to scraps. You are not warriors. You are vermin gnawing on a blade, and I will crush you myself." The survivors around me stared at the transmission, their faces pale. Some lowered their heads as though the weight of his words alone threatened to bury them, but not me. I pressed my hand against the shattered glass, staring back at him. "Come and try, you bastard." On his bridge, the alien commander felt the old fury burn hotter than ever. For cycles he had led fleet after fleet, his victories flawless, his supremacy unquestioned. Never had prey dared to wound him, never had vermin forced him to take the field himself. Yet here he was. "Bring us forward," he ordered, his claws dug into the rail, sparks flaring as steel bent under his grip. "If they refuse to kneel, I will show them despair with my own hands." His officers obeyed without hesitation, though unease rippled in their eyes. They had never seen him this way, descending from detached command to the blood of the field. But none dared question. The flagship surged ahead, its cannons blazing. Plasma tore into the remains of the human fleet, ripping through hulls, shattering shields. One by one, ships disintegrated under its wrath, and still the humans fought back. I saw the iron rain charging forward, its hull already torn open, flames spilling into the void. Harlan's voice thundered across the comms, hoarse but unbroken. "Target the flagship. Every gun, every missile. We take it with us. If we fall." The human fleet rallied. What remained of it anyway? Scarred frigates and half-dead cruisers turned as one, pouring their last fire into the alien flagship. Rail slugs slammed into its shields, missiles streaked across the void, torpedoes detonated against its hull. For the first time, the alien behemoth staggered, its shields flared, faltered, then held, but not without cracks. Commander snarled, his scaled lips curling. "Insult creatures," he ordered. A counter-strike. Plasma fire rained down, vaporizing 2 frigates in a single volley, ripping a carrier apart in a blaze of white fire. The sky lit with death, but the humans didn't stop. Neither did we. From the wreckage of the Vanguard, we dragged a damaged missile battery online, wiring it to auxiliary power. Sparks hissed as we forced it to Life, its system screaming in protest. Range? I asked, my voice raw. Point blank, one of the survivors replied. Grimly, then let's make it count. We turned the battery toward the flagship. My hands shook as I primed the launch, every nerve in my body screaming. Through the cracked viewport I could see the massive vessel bearing down on us, its cannons glowing like the eyes of some ancient beast. Fire, the missile streaked into the void, a lone spear against a mountain. It slammed into the flagship's flank, detonating in a blaze that rippled across its shields. For a heartbeat, I thought we'd done nothing, then I saw it, the shields flickered, leaving a scar across the alien ship's gleaming armor. The survivors around me cheered, their voices ragged but fierce. For the first time, we had made the monster bleed. The commander's roar echoed across the calms, his fury unmasked. You dare, I will tear you from the stars myself. The battle descended into chaos. Human ships rammed alien cruisers, detonating in blinding eruptions that shook the void. Fighters dove through swarms of plasma fire, striking enemy engines before being torn apart themselves. Every move was suicide, and every move cut deeper into the alien fleet. I felt the station shudder as the wreckage of another human destroyer drifted past a flame, but even in the ruin, even in the blood, there was defiance. Every death was a curse spat in the enemy's face. On his flagship, the alien commander leaned forward, his fury burning. Bring us closer, he hissed. I will end this with my own claws if I must. His ship surged ahead, closing the gap between predator and prey. The iron rain moved to intercept, its engines flaring one last time. Harlan's voice roared across the comms, stronger than steel, louder than the void. This is for Earth. The battleship charged, guns blazing, slamming volley after volley into the flagship. Its hull split apart under return fire, decks collapsing, flames spilling into the void. But it didn't stop. It drove straight at the alien behemoth, closing the distance like a wolf throwing itself at a lion. I pressed against the glass, my chest burning, tears blurring my vision. Harlan knew he wasn't going to survive. He didn't care. The iron rain collided with the flagship's side, detonating every warhead, every reactor, every scrap of fuel in its belly. The explosion tore across the void like a second sun. The alien flagship staggered, its shields collapsing, its armor splitting open in molten scars. For a moment the behemoth faltered, fire spilling from its wounds, but it didn't fall, not yet. And as the flames cleared, I saw him, the alien commander, standing tall on the bridge, his eyes burning with hate. The battle wasn't over, but neither was humanity. The blast of the iron rain still burned in my eyes, even now, as smoke hissed from broken panels and alarms wailed faintly. In the ruins of the Vanguard, I could see it, the fireball blooming against the alien flagship, the steel monster buckling under the impact. Captain Harlan was gone. His ship was ash, his voice forever silent, but his last act had torn a hole in the enemy's pride. The flagship staggered in the void, its shield shattered, its hull scarred. For the first time the invincible bled. The survivors in the wreckage cheered, their voices hoarse but fierce. For a heartbeat, hope surged through us like fire. Then the alien flagship steadied itself. Through the cracked viewport I saw its massive cannons glow once more, its engines rumbling as it turned back toward Earth. Harlan had struck deep, but not enough. The beast still lived. The calm officer's voice broke over the static, raw with despair. It's not dead. God help us, it's not dead. I clenched my fists until blood dripped from my palms. My chest burned, my throat tight. We had nothing left, no fleet, no reinforcements, only ruins and ghosts, but ghosts can bite. Get me. "Com link," I rasped. The officer stared at me, his face pale. "To who?" "To anyone still alive." The com crackled, my voice spilling across every remaining channel. "This is the Vanguard. Harland is gone, but we're not. That monster still stands, and if we let it live, Earth dies. I don't care if your guns are cracked, if your hull is bleeding, if your engines barely burn. Aim them at that flagship. This is our last shot." For a moment, only static answered. Then one by one, battered voices came through. "Frigate Endeavor, weapons still hot. We're with you. Corvette Horizon, shields gone, but we'll strike. Destroyer Valor, last missiles armed. Let's finish this." A handful of ships, broken, limping, but still alive, enough for one last charge. On his bridge, the alien commander sneered at the transmissions, his scaled lips curling into a cruel smile. "Pathetic," he hissed. "They throw themselves at me again, as if death has not taught them its lesson. Let them come. I will scatter their ashes across the void." But deep in his chest, that flicker of unease had grown. He had lost too much already. His perfect fleet lay in ruins, his invincible pride scarred, and the humans still refused to kneel there. Chaos terrified him because he couldn't predict it, couldn't control it. The remnants of humanity's fleet turned as one, engines flaring, guns hot. The Vanguard shook as we rerouted the last of its power to the missile battery we'd salvage. Sparks rained, smoke choked the air, but the system hummed to life. The comm officer's hands trembled over the console. "If this doesn't work, it will," I said, though I didn't believe it. "It has to." We surged forward, the last wolves in a dying pack. Alien fire rad across the void, tearing through our numbers. The Endeavor went up in flames, scattering across the battlefield. The horizon split apart, its crew's final scream lost in static, but the Valor fired its last missiles, slamming them into the flagship's scarred flank. Explosions rippled across its hull, tearing wider the wound Harland had left. I locked the Vanguard sights on that wound, my fingers steady despite the blood dripping from them. "Target locked," I whispered. The officer stared at me, his lips trembling. "We won't survive the recoil." "We don't need to." The alien commander bared his teeth, rage flaring. His claws slammed against the railing as his officers reported the damage. "Shields failing, hull breach on Sector 9, seal it," he roared. "Their desperation means nothing. End them now." He refused to admit it, but he felt it, fear coiling tight in his chest. These humans should have broken long ago. Instead, they were dragging him into the abyss with them. The missile battery hummed its systems, screaming. Warning lights flashed across the panel, power surging beyond safe limits. The deck shuddered, the hull groaned, but I didn't stop. "This is for Titan," I whispered. My brother's voice echoed in my head. "Don't wait for me, fight." I slammed the launch. The missile streaked across the void, a single spear of fire aimed straight at the heart of the beast. The Valor's last guns joined it, rail slugs tearing into the same wound. The alien flagship roared as the missile struck. The explosion ripped through its belly, tearing fire into its core. Flames blossomed, spreading like a disease. Through its decks, for a moment the giant still stood, groaning under the weight of its wounds, then its engines ruptured, its spine snapping in a blaze of white fire. The alien commander's roar echoed across the comms, cut short. As his bridge collapsed in flame, his image flickered, then vanished into static. The flagship split apart, burning from within, its carcass scattering into the void. The monster was dead. Silence followed, not peace, but silence. The battlefield was a graveyard. Human ships drifted in ruins, their lights dimming, their signals gone. The survivors were few, barely more than shadows clinging to wrecks. But we had done it. The flagship burned, its wreckage tumbling into the void, its fire painting the stars. The second wave was broken. The survivors in the vanguard stared through the viewport, tears streaming down their soot-streaked faces. Some laughed, ragged and hollow, others wept, clutching each other like children. I stood among them, my chest heavy, my throat raw. We had lost everything. Harlan, my brother, thousands, millions. Earth was scarred, our fleet shattered, our people bled dry. But we had not knelt. That mattered. Days later, the fires still burned across Earth's surface. Cities lay in ruin, seas choked with ash, skies darkened with smoke. But in the wreckage, people rose. Farmers dug through rubble, engineers patched what they could, soldiers scavenged weapons from the dead. I stood on the broken observation deck once more, staring down at the scarred world below. My body ached, my arms still bandaged, my lungs heavy with smoke. But I was alive, and so was humanity. The comm crackled faintly, one last signal from the scattered survivors of the fleet. This is Captain Rays of the Valor. To any who still breathe, we are not defeated. The galaxy will know. Humanity stands. I closed my eyes, my brother's voice whispering through my memory, don't wait for me, fight. We had fought, we had bled, we had nearly died. But we had proven one truth: no alien arrogance could erase. Humanity is not prey. We are predators, and the galaxy would remember that until its last breath.